So you want to write a really good series? Well, you came to the right person. For the first time in my 16-year career here on YouTube, I'm going to be revealing my 5 tips and secrets on how to write a good series or how to tell a good story. For those who don't know who I am, my name is McJuggerNuggets. I've got a couple billion views here on YouTube. To all my diehard fans, shout out, you guys are awesome. I'm well known in the community for being one of the very few narrative-driven storytellers here on the platform. It is by no means easy to establish a career being a narrative storyteller on social media. Content on the McJuggerNuggets channel over the years has been more akin to TV and Netflix than I would say like most other YouTubers' content. Now, this video is not going to be centered around YouTube growth or how to get views or how to package your series or story so that it is marketable. My main objective is to try to educate you guys and any aspiring storytellers, TV, film writers, screenwriters, you name it, just anyone who wants to write a good story, a good series, something that stretches over many episodes, or something that just requires a little bit more depth than just say a 90-minute script. My biggest claim to fame is the Psycho series, which was close to 700 episodes. We were filming 2 30-minute episodes every single day for 2.5 years. And then my other 2 claims to fame are My Virtual Escape, which is a 24-episode produced cinematic series, as well as The Devil Inside, which is a blend of cinematic and vlog style, which spans over 4 seasons and potentially even a 5th. We could be in it right now, I don't know. Before we jump into my 5 tips, I just want to say that I have actually shown my process before, but mostly in regards to filmmaking and actually the production aspects. I've never divulged anything related to writing. I have revealed the Psycho series secret formula, which kind of tells you how to structure a video for virality, but mostly as it pertained to the freak out genre, but you could apply kind of the hook, the dangle, all these terms that I use into other forms of media. For those who watch the My Virtual Escape behind the scenes, you got to see bloopers and you got to see how it is just directing and trying to memorize lines and all that, which is all well and good, but we need to start from the beginning and how to actually form a good series, how to write good characters, how to come up with that central idea, and just what is the best way to tackle this behemoth. Because to be honest, why I think series on YouTube or on other these platforms, why it's kind of like a lost art is because it is hard. It's just so much more content, it's so much more depth, and there's so much to write and figure out that the barriers to entry are high, and I think not many people are willing to try to create cohesion when it comes to their content, whether that's inside jokes, Easter eggs, you name it. There is so much lore and mythology to the McJuggerNuggets channel that I feel like is often overlooked except for the diehard fans. So let me open the door, if you will, and show you into my process. The very first step is what's known as the core. There are many master classes on how to tell a good story from famous directors, whatever. This is my process. This is what works for me. Take whatever bits you like and apply it to your own, or just straight copy exactly what I do, and hey, that's great. It's a process that I found efficient, and these tips helped me, so maybe they'll help you. So right, step 1, the core theme, the core message, but I like calling it the core tickle, which sounds a little ridiculous, but I like keeping the box wide open. All I mean by this is pick a person, pick a thing. What is something that tickles your brain? Could just be a goofy idea, a funny joke, and you use that as your springboard. Now, I don't want this to feel like a school lesson. There's so much content to show you examples. One of my first series, Overachievers, which is in 480p quality, it just started as a simple idea. What if we filmed a skit on Valentine's Day? And holidays are a great prompt. I ran #TripleM, which was a weekly series where I shouted out different filmmakers and YouTubers, but I give them a prompt. Either you get a prompt from somebody else or you find your own prompt. Ideally, it's something that you're genuinely passionate and interested about. So the core tickle for this series, Overachievers, was I wanted to make a video about Valentine's Day. And what about a confusion between a kid who's in love with his Xbox versus confusion and people thinking it's a girlfriend? It was like a twist. Toward the viewer is like, oh, they're talking about Jesse's girlfriend. No, actually, he's referring to this Xbox the whole time. He has a weird infatuation and love interest with his Xbox. So that was the big twist. And that was a very juvenile, like simple thing. And then the overall concept of that series was 2 friends so obsessed with Xbox achievements that they start to bring them into real life and try to outdo each other. For my series called The Game, my core tickle was, what if my cousin Tom Abraham is an alien? It's just like a funny offhand joke of like, what if he was an alien? And then you build from that core concept, that core tickle, like where is the alien from? What are his interests? What are his intentions? What are the other characters? You can see I'll just start it from one idea. For Psycho series, that very initial episode, it was not a fully formed series from the get. It was twofold. One, I saw these freak out videos from Waffle Pone that were performing really well, so I wanted to get views. However, how I made it my own was, my dad in real life always had an issue with us playing video games on his big screen television. situation. He was afraid of the image of a video game burning itself onto the screen. It was actually a real thing called ghosting. So if, say I left the Halo main menu on there, it was left there for 20 minutes while I went to use the bathroom or something, and he comes back, he goes to watch TV, you could actually see a faint image of the Halo main menu burned into the screen. So we were not allowed to play on there. And I thought, wow, that's such a funny concept, and it resonates with me because it's been a point of friction. What if I was a bad boy and played on that screen? And what if and it's always a lot of what ifs. What if my dad came home and caught me with my pants down? I didn't realize he was coming through the door. And then how could he destroy it? What's a new way to destroy something? Oh, he puts it in the fireplace. There's a fire rage and it's winter. And then that core tickle became, my dad mows lawns. I'm still obsessed with video games. Let's have him run the video games over a lawnmower because he doesn't get a job. It's all based on real life stuff. Now you could do fictional stuff, you can do real life things, but you want for the core tickle, you want that core theme to be something that matters to you, something that speaks to you, or something that you think might speak to other people. What the core theme of the Psycho series became after that is once everything started going viral, I applied this same concept on a larger scale. What's a larger, I don't want to say political message, but what's just a message that you would like to get across to people? One thing that drove me crazy was everyone blaming violence in society on video games. Like, what if the video games make you violent? I thought of spinning that negative connotation with video games. It's like, well, what if it's the abusive dad over years and years that causes the kid to be violent and is not the video games? And that was the core theme I wanted to explore. We'll get to the finish for that one in a bit. And then for My Virtual Escape, the core tickle, believe it or not, for My Virtual Escape was actually Leafy Is Here, another big YouTuber who did commentary videos. He even did one on the Psycho series while that was going on. But this kid was blowing up, and I was actually very fascinated by him as a person and honestly as a character. So I thought, well, what if I wrote a character like Leafy? What is his story? Like, who is this character? Why is he so jaded? Why does he feel the need to criticize and comment on all these other people's lives? Like, what are his issues? And I'm like, well, maybe he's lost somebody. Maybe he's shut off from the world. And I'm like, who's he lost? I'm like, parent, it's kind of explored that. Maybe he lost his little sister. And that was the core tickle. And then you build other things on top of that. But that's step one. Pretty basic, right? Pick something that interests you. Pick something that stands out, something that's weird, something that you're always fascinated by. Or the Ursula series. There's a house in the woods that's spooky, and I'm very interested in what exists there. Well, what could exist there? A corpse bride. It's Ursula. It's Ursula, and she died when she was supposed to be married. So she haunts the place in her wedding dress. And now when it comes to episodes and things, so you come up with the core tickle, what's the series, the show is all about, and kind of just start with one idea or one character, one thing. And then you start world building from there. And when you're breaking things into episodic, the whole series is serving one theme or one question, like the violence in video games or like the abusive father, and how does that mold somebody. But then each episode you break it into a smaller core tickle. What if Psycho Kid got a job as a paintball specialist? Or even a season, you can break a season off one theme. What if Psycho Kid was forced to work on a farm? And how does that serve the abusive dad and where we're trying to get to? So that's step one, these cores. You got to collect the cores, right? Step two is define the vehicles. And no, I'm not talking about, this is not like a Forza Motorsports show or Twisted Metal the series, although that would be fantastic. What I mean is, it's basically defining the characters. And why I'm calling them vehicles is the character is just a vessel to deliver this core message or this story to the masses and to express yourself in the process. So who is the best character, the best lens to look at this important message? So when it comes to the core tickle of the game series, with Tom being an alien, well, there's our main character right there. There is our vehicle, which is Tom the alien. And then we need to find other vehicles. And you also need to establish conflict within it. So who would be a good character to throw into the mix with an alien? Well, let's have a human. I want to be the human because I'm skeptical on aliens. Yeah, how about we have somebody that's an alien and then somebody who's skeptical of aliens? And usually they're opposites of each other. And when you get opposites, that's when you get the best friction. That's when you get the best stories. Because we're all drawn to conflict, and that is what drives us every day, is problem solving, solving issues. And you want characters, you want people that are on extreme ends, so it makes for more compelling storytelling. And so for Psycho series, it's like, okay, you have an abusive dad, and then you have a son who wants to pursue gaming. What if he had a brother that was just like his dad? So you get two problems. And then what if we had another uncle, Uncle Chris, that also is against the gaming and wants Jesse to get a job? Okay, and then, well, what if we just made it a whole war, a whole ideological war? What if there was a mom that enabled the kid? And what if there was an Uncle Larry, another uncle, that enables the kid as well and is on Jesse's side? Then we have all these characters. It's like some Game of Thrones shit. You got all these characters that can battle each other ideologically, and then we have so many twists and turns, so many different dynamics, and so many different stories that could potentially be explored. And a lot of Psycho series was really just about this internal family drama. Granted, we had some big stunts and everything, but really when it came to production and having to block out all these different storylines, it really was very much like a soap opera to where we could churn these out, make it feel like reality. And it was mostly about these characters. So the more compelling, the more interesting you can make your vehicles, the vessels that are telling the story, the more extreme and polarizing you can make them, the more interesting it is. Unfortunately, with the way the society is now, I feel like a lot of characters have gotten watered down just out of safety. Even though back in the past, we used to explore such great depth and subject matter because artists were not afraid of the repercussions. We could explore the trials and tribulations of every possible extreme character. And now, oh no, what if we don't get the funding, or what if we get canceled, or what if YouTube pulls demonetization? You don't get that compelling story. And the story of Psycho Kid and the story of Isaac Calder, which are very edgy, dark stories, we threw a lot at these characters, unfortunately cannot be monetized and it can't be told in the right proper way on YouTube and these other platforms. That's a big issue, but whew, don't get me started. So we have our core tickle, we have our vehicles, our vessels, our characters in which to translate this story to the audience.
A few days in the future, I could not sleep because I left out such an important step in this process. It's kind of between steps 2 and 3 for your characters and the conflict. Everybody needs to have a very strong motivation or desire. That is what fuels the characters to get to the end. And the conflict is derived from those characters not being able to fulfill their motivations or desires. So when you're throwing all this stuff at your main characters and why you're making their life miserable, is just so they cannot get from point A to point B. We all have these wants, these dreams, these desires to manifest, but then there's always someone that gets in the way. That's where the conflict arises, and then that's where the resolution can come from. The higher the stakes, the bigger the dream, the bigger the motivation for your character. Like Psycho Kid had such a big motivation to become a pro gamer or a massive YouTuber, and if you have a dad that doesn't believe in you, or you have all these other players in the virtual world going against you, stopping you from wishing to get your little sister back, these are very big dreams, which are big stories, which create big conflict and big stakes for your story. I just had to jump in. My motivation right now of Jesse Ridgway, the character, is to make sure you guys know how to tell a good story. So the conflict arises from past Jesse not doing his job right. Motivation's such a big one. I thought it'd be poetic if I did this in front of all my old series, but you have to show change. Your character's wants and desires have to create this evolution. They have to tell this grand story. You just have to show that metamorphosis by the ending. So when you're trying to come up with your ending, it's either the character gets to achieve those dreams and desires, or perhaps they fail miserably and it's a very tragic ending, or it's somewhere in the middle. And really, my Virtual Escape and Psycho series had a more bittersweet, melancholy ending to where, yes, maybe they got their dreams fulfilled, but at what cost? Did it cost them their life? Did it cost them their soul? Did Walter White in Breaking Bad, did he get to fulfill his dreams of being the kingpin? The ultimate best salesman? Or did he die just like he always planned to do at the very beginning of the show and he loses family in the process entirely? It's up to you what kind of ending you want to make, but I would just make sure that your character goes through the full journey from episode 1 to the finale. You can see a very clear difference. I feel like stories that don't have a big change end up feeling not worth telling. I would also just look at your own life. Imagine when you had a strong desire and you accomplished that goal versus you actually know the goals that you have and you never even fulfill them or achieve them. One of them is a life worth living, and the other one is something that you'll always regret and you'll be sad about because you never fulfilled them. What's a story that you think is worth telling? And in my eyes, and in probably most everyone, it's universal. We want to see people do incredible things, face extreme adversity, and we want there to be some takeaway, some impact that we can derive and implement into our own life. If you put the world and the characters of your story through hell and there isn't some sort of payoff, whether spiritually or the world changes or whatever, the character dies in the end, just make sure it's not all in vain. Because people sit through 4 seasons of a show, even a 2-hour movie, and if by the end of the movie nothing's changed, the characters really stayed the same, the world is not affected, there is no impact at all, things just revert back to normal. If there's no takeaway and no change, well then what was the point? Why waste everybody's time? You're more than welcome to kill off main characters and such, but just make sure it's for the greater good and that there is a reason for it. It's not gratuitous. I don't want to say that there are hard, fast rules, but you do got to make sure that when you're telling a story for audiences, that you don't disrespect their time and their investment into the medium. And it's what makes the difference between a good story and a bad story. There's plenty of shows where they kill off a main character just to boost the ratings or just to have an impact. And I was like, well, what was the point? What did it do for the story? So just make sure that all the decision you're making, it fuels those character motivations or it fuels a larger plot, or else you're going to piss some people off. Anyway, back to Jesse in the past.
Next is the actual story, the conflict, the series of conflicts. Or I like to also say, how much can you throw at your characters? This is where it reminds me of like when you're a kid and you have your stuffed animals or your action figures and you just start smashing their heads together. You just start flying them around the room, smashing their heads in the... You take a small bug and you pick his legs off, you throw him across the room, you melt him with a freaking magnifying glass. That is the fun part. That is where you're ripping up the grass, torturing bees, you're ripping your stuffed animals' limbs off, they're hanging, dangling off the edge of a cliff, and then you drop them, and then they're revived and they come back. That's all this is. You take those characters that you just kind of formulated and you think, okay, how many issues can we create here? Let's take examples. Isaac. Okay, core theme, he lost his little sister. I'm into video games. What's the next evolution of video games? Let's go virtual reality. Why is he playing virtual reality? To escape the death of his little sister. It tells itself. What if there was other characters that want to escape their demons? What if Solomon, who's a little girl, hates her home life and her parents, so she plays a big bad mob boss in the game to try to feel important and special and like she has control in her life? That's a good conflict. Everybody can relate to having issues with their parents. And take Sega Kid, for example. Every kid, when they're getting out of college or they get out of high school, they need to get a job, they need money. That is universally relatable, unless you're like born rich or whatever. In that case, you probably still are going to have fights with your parents in different ways. And then they're like, okay, how many different ways can the two fight and how many repercussions and consequences can come from these dynamics? So what if it got so bad for Sega Kid that he gets kicked out of his house? What if all the things he loves, like gaming and filmmaking or YouTube videos, what if his cameras get broken? What if his Xboxes get destroyed? And then you just keep upping the ante. You can even look at the biggest YouTubers. It's all about raising the stakes. And you can apply this to any genre. You can apply it to your own life, and why sometimes people kind of feel like they plateaued is we all want higher stakes. We want more incentives. And so, okay, Sega Kid's starting to get desensitized as the audience is to an Xbox destruction. What if we built a whole room and just destroyed it and took it from the kid? What if the trailer that he's been hiding out in gets destroyed? What if Uncle Larry, the one person who was always there for Psycho Kid, what if he gets destroyed inside and out? And what if the mom character who enabled Sega Kid this whole time, what if they get divorced and she leaves the family? And what if even she herself turns against the Psycho Kid? And what if Uncle Larry turns against the Psycho Kid? What if Psycho Kid has no one left? Everyone's spiritually died. And all the things that gave him joy, which were video games and all this expression. What if his room was completely stripped? And what if he was forced down into a small room, just left with himself, whom he's starting to think and question is psycho, like his father? What happens? How much does the character break? Or Isaac, he finally has a love of his life, Rebecca, in the VR world. All of a sudden, she's shot and killed with the gold gun and dies in real life. So not only is his little sister dead, what if all of a sudden his stepmom dies of cancer, but his real mom also left the family? What if there's a little girl like his sister in the game, and Isaac's, you just start throwing as much as humanly possible at your characters. And that's what makes a compelling story. You want to create a roller coaster ride. And it can't all be bad, though. So it's not just a matter of like, let me just throw everything. Although I think that makes a more compelling story. And just think of your favorite movies, your favorite TV shows. Think of all the things that these characters have had to endure. And usually the best ones and the craziest stories are the most dire. And that's why I love Lord of the Rings so much, or Lost. It's like these people, man, they've been through the ringer. Walking Dead, like Game of Thrones, like holy even Squid Game, which was immensely popular, the stakes were so high. All the characters got everything thrown at them. We even lost characters, you know? But you do need to have good moments. You don't want to make the audience miserable. And that's why in Sega Series or MVE, there did have to be those moments where Sega Kid got to laugh with Uncle Larry, or got to play with Mark and Corn, or had some videos that did well, or Jeffrey and Sega Kid had a moment where they hugged, or Psycho Dad actually had a moment in the hunting video where he finally understood his son for a moment, or we had great twists where Uncle Chris, who started as an asshole, by the end of the series had turned completely on Psycho Kid's side and was defending him. And the same goes for MVE. I mean, well, Isaac really, I really threw a bunch of shit at that kid, man. He really prevailed. But he had a couple moments where he actually trusted Arachnid, or he felt like he was leveling up in the game and he was actually like doing good stuff. He took it to Malachi at the end of season 1, was like, yeah, I'm good at this. Or all of a sudden he escaped in Brothers in Arms and made it out with his life, and he thought, wow, what a trip, what a fun ride. And you need those moments for the audience to really just relate to that character and share in their happiness, to share in their joys. So it's not just about throwing all the bad stuff. You got to throw some really awesome moments for your characters as well. Some close calls, some moments for romance or friendship, just good moments and bad moments. You need the full ride. And that's where the storytelling process comes in. It's mostly in these first 3 steps, the conflict being the most important. And I would just encourage you to think of a million what ifs. It's like you have that character like, okay, what if we threw this at him? And what if we threw this at him? What if we threw this at him? I would not worry about the logistics. How are we going to shoot that? How are we going to do that? I would just throw as much in the creative process as possible. You can always take stuff out later on if you can't actually pull it off. But you'd be surprised. One of my favorite series I made is Rule 19. It was just 3 episodes, a beginning, a middle, and end. And the core tickle for that one was I was just done filming with other people. Other people let me down, scheduling conflicts. I couldn't have other people to film with. So, I was like, you know what? I'm playing every damn character. That was the core. That was the core for me. I'm going to write something that I play everyone. But I didn't want it corny where I'm like wearing wigs and like obviously it's still all me playing the character. So I'm like, well, how can I do this? Well, what if it's a clone series? What if I'm just clones? So that's why I look the same in all of them. I built my characters. I was like, okay, well, what's the story with clones? Well, what if you wanted some that stand out? Because they all look the same. They all want to stand out from each other. Well, one goes in the direction of control and power over the other clones. He gets a little crazy with it too. Also, there's one that's a little nerdy that just wants to develop technology for the clones to advance their little civilization. And what if there's one that is just loyal to the original Jesse Ridgway and wants to keep the clones in line? And there's another clone that just wants freedom. He just wants to leave all of them behind and have his own life. And then just to make matters worse, they're all battling a ticking time bomb, which is a disease called, ironically, like COVID-19, it's called Rule 19. That's an example of precognition. Anyway, we'll talk. I'm leaking my own shit. We'll talk about that in the future. These clones get a virus that causes them to die slowly over time. And so those are the 3 steps right there for that series. But the plot is very much derived by the dynamics of these characters and what is that larger story that you're trying to tell. Just really have fun with it and just write down a million different things. So now we're on to the 4th step. Now, if you haven't realized right now, you already got your themes, your characters, and your story. So all that conflict. So it's already done pretty much. Now step 4 is the structuring process. For me, I'll just go onto my phone and I'll write down the tickle, the characters, all these notes, just gibberish, but I understand it. If I showed it to other people, I think you'd understand it. But it's important that however you need to write it, your process is your process. As long as you understand it, that's fine. However, you want to structure everything. You're doing a long form series. You really do need to organize it in a way that doesn't even confuse you. So my advice for this, construct a holy Bible of your show. And what that means is map out the roadmap of everything. Where are you taking your main characters? Where do they start and where do they end up? Have some key moments along the way. And that's why, like, for my virtual escape, key moments was like, well, I know this nun character is going to end up getting stabbed because she follows what she thinks is God's voice in virtual reality. Season 2 is just a major climax of like the brothers, all of Solomon's brotherhood, as well as Elijah. I just visualized these cool moments that I wanted to share with the world. And it really is kind of like if you've ever done a puzzle, you kind of collect the corner pieces first, then the outside, and then you start filling in the inside. It's the exact same process. So when you're in this Bible, you can have a little character list and you can have what drives them and all that, and you get very detailed. But just make sure you have an overarching view of like what's the beginning, middle, end, where are you going with it? So for Psycho series, it was like I knew I wanted a divorce arc. I wanted an odd jobs. I wanted a farming thing. And these were all just explorations. Like it'd be cool if the mom got divorced and then went to stay at a friend's house because I knew a lot of my audience suffered from that. So let's share that story. I also want where the dad gets so controlling that he locks Jesse up in a small room and it's like solitary confinement, like he's a prisoner in his own house. I didn't know how long it was going to last and I didn't know how long farming was going to last, but I just blocked these things out in my head of like, okay, there's at least 10 big arcs I want to explore and let me make sure I have that written down. And then also I want to make sure it ends with the kid shooting his father and fleeing to Switzerland. I actually didn't even know where he was fleeing to. I just knew he flees the country. I also didn't know how much money specifically. It's okay that you don't have all the little details. All you're worried about is piecing together the core tickle, the characters, and the main things that you think will be cool to explore. Once you have that holy Bible complete, and this is the second half of step 4, you then want to start filling in some little details and some gaps. This is when if you wanted to name your seasons, name episodes, you came up with a cool title for something, something, there's something specifically you're passionate about that you want to explore in an episode, you can start writing little details. Like, I remember I wasn't sure when Psycho Family hunting was going to take place, but in my mind, that was a turning point with Jesse and his dad, where there was some mutual understanding of each other. I knew I wanted a point where the protagonist and the antagonist, I wanted them to come together. And I don't even like using those terms. I like to say, like, or good guy, bad guy. I wanted the son and father who have been at odds for most of the show. I did want them to come together at a later point in the series. I wasn't sure when I originally wrote it. I wasn't sure how exactly. And these things get pieced together over time, and that's fine. You don't need to have the full show written at the beginning. I would advise against that, because when you're writing these small details, when I wrote My Virtual Escape, I had my Holy Bible. It was maybe only 4 or 5 pages. A lot of it was up here, and I had little cues, little hints for myself. It was like, Solomon's little girl, she gets her throat slit by arachnid, like 3/4 into the show. And why it was 3/4 was because I knew in order to break Isaac, things had to come to a head right around 3/4 in, because you know the end, there's supposed to be some resolution, hopefully, depending on what you're writing. There are no rules to this, remember. Have fun with it. I think people get held up on it has to be a certain way, but no, there are no rules to this. And there you go. You now should have a structure of your characters, your core themes you want to explore, different little plot points, twists and turns along the way, and maybe you have a loose idea of how it ends or the message you're trying to drive across or where you want your characters to end up and how they shift through the series. So you're pretty much done. And now I just wanted to talk about my final step, step 5. This to me is one of the most important things, and that's the ending. I think a lot of people struggle with how to end something, and I know everybody has a relationship with how TV shows end, and whether it's like the Game of Thrones ending or Lost finale, or I know we're coming up on a Walking Dead series finale. So many finales. They're either incredible, like a Breaking Bad, and you're like, yeah, I feel resolved. Or like the Psycho series, kid shoots his dad, flees to Switzerland, and is haunted by what he did. But then also the camera falls over and turns out it was all fucking reality show. Like what? Or My Virtual Escape, it was like all a simulation. It was like 3 layers of simulation, like some Inception shit. Isaac and Abraham come to blows in real life. Joseph gets shot, and like the little sister, and they're in Haven. And it was like, holy crap. More important than anything, if you want a successful show, and I don't even mean like it gets crazy views and whatever, because that would be great. I just mean for your story, like the game series, I told it exactly the way I wanted it. But why I wanted to have my own final point for the ending is because the whole purpose of you telling this story is to send a message. And the message could be a form of expression for yourself, and then also potentially help other people. And for some people, that message, that theme, whatever, it's a little muddy, and you can tell the weaker stuff from the good stuff based on how strong that core is. You want to make sure it's impactful. Because I've watched so many movies and shows where it ends, and then you don't think about it ever again. You watch it, it's like, that was all right, that was good, and then you forget about it. But there's a reason every day I get tweets and messages about the Psycho series. There's a reason people hit me up all the time, every single day, about My Virtual Escape. And it's not because they got crazy views or it was just shot so well. It's because the storytelling was strong. The characters were compelling. They said you don't need that much money. You don't need the best actors. Well, that's not true. You need people that can act. You can shoot on a cell phone. I'll get to that point at the end. But you can tell a story with limited technology and limited resources. But you just want to make sure that when you get to that finish line, that you feel like that you are fulfilled and that you're resolved and that the audience is left with something. Tragedy definitely sells. If you have something lingering, if the audience is left with something like a big gaping hole, a character die, like Breaking Bad with Walter White. Spoilers, if you haven't watched it, what are you doing? You want to leave them with something. And if you didn't pack a strong enough punch, then the whole show, in my opinion, was for nothing. And it just means that somewhere along that storytelling process, either your characters weren't strong enough, the twists and turns weren't deep enough, the plot wasn't the stakes weren't as high, or maybe you f***ed up the ending. The landing was weak. Maybe there was no takeaway. And those are the stories we forget about versus the ones that stay with us. So I would really make sure that your ending is compelling. Whereas, say for like the game series of mine, it started as a joke of like, what if Tom was an alien? And by the end, we were exploring this vast breadth of sacrifice and what is humanity and saving the world and where we've originated from and friendship and family and betrayal, like all kinds of crazy messages that I felt like was an ending and was a series and story that kind of stuck with people. For those that were able to watch, I mean, YouTube just killed me with copyright on those, and it was like older before you guys knew me. But something that makes you want to get a tattoo afterwards, you know? Or something 10 years later, you're like, yo, son, or whoever, or my friends, hey, can we all binge watch this together? Can we all watch this? Or like it makes you want to recommend it to somebody. Sink that landing and have a compelling finish, you know? Finish strong. That's how you do the series. Those are my 5 steps, my 5 secrets. Now, I want to talk a little bit right now just about some quick notes, some stuff that I feel like didn't warrant its own, but is important to know. With the whole structuring of your series, I want to keep reiterating, stay open-minded. Just because you had something written down in the Bible or, it was a compelling idea 2 years ago when you first wrote it, be open to the fact that once you get your head in the game and you're making the show or you're filming the series or maybe you're just going through a rewrite, be ready to ebb and flow and potentially change a lot of stuff that you wrote because maybe you see it with a new lens or maybe you figured out a way you can do it better. And for my virtual escape, I followed that Holy Bible pretty ironically religiously, but when it came time for each week, that was when I wrote the episode. So I knew how the whole show was going to go, but every week, right before we were going to shoot it, I wrote a 30-page script. And once I was multiple episodes in and I was playing Isaac regularly and I was starting to get my head in the game and understand the universe like by living in it, I started to change dialogue. I started to change where different characters go and what directions they take. Also, I mean, the series was influenced by you guys making decisions at the end of every episode. But I really made sure to take ideas from the comments, iterate on lines. I'm like, Isaac wouldn't say that. Isaac actually would say that. And that's where improvisation and figuring out on the go creates, I feel like, such a more immersive story and also creates a more realistic atmosphere. And that's why sometimes we would improv a lot of dialogue in MVE. Or Psycho series, it was filmed in such a way, so the more real and the more immersive it feels, the more you can pack that story into people's hearts. Because the whole point of cinema, TV, and film is you want the audience, the viewer, to lose themselves in the story you're telling. And that's why Psycho series was so powerful, is people lost themselves because they thought it was real. And that's another layer that I feel like most shows or movies can't tap into. Maybe loosely with based on a true story. But this was like as real as it gets. And so because people identified so much with the characters, like, oh my God, it's actually going on, it was pulling at the heartstrings. And with that, you could do so much more. And if we started scripting things in Psycho series, you would be able to taste it. Something would feel a little off, it would feel a little robotic. And we did have certain lines that I did want to hit, but the line was buried and hidden within a bunch of improv. And we just made sure it made its way out at some point in time. And we just got such a more organic, like the divorce video is so raw, and most of that was improv. I would give key points to hit, and then I'm like, hey, just have fun with it. And that's the key to all this. As corny as it sounds, great, you wrote your series, great, you're getting ready to tell your story. Make sure you are having fun with the process, and that's why it's important to get those core tickles that really tickle your pickle, that really light you up and get you excited, or that have you curious to explore. And make sure the characters, the people you have doing stuff with, even if it is just yourself, make sure like you enjoy doing stuff with them or you like creating with them, and make sure that the stakes are high enough. And like I said, as comes up, be ready to move on the fly because you don't know what's going to happen. I remember one big thing was John Haggerty, who played Sexy Mobster John. He was never supposed to become the new mob boss. I was presented with a problem at the end of season 1 where Mother Sarah, Mrs. Stahlberger, and Mr. Stahlberger, who's playing Solomon, they were going on a multi-month vacation. Sprung out of nowhere. They're like, oh, by the way, we're leaving for like a couple months and we're not going to be around. And I'm like, what the is this? Like, we got a weekly show we're doing. I'm like, that's not good. Luckily, Mother Sarah's timed out like she was always supposed to die. But Solomon's running, like, what do we do here? John had come out to be kind of like an extra in one of the episodes. And I'm like, okay, maybe like John's already proven to be kind of an a-hole in the show. What if the a-hole becomes the new mob boss and Solomon just like, we push everything back. Solomon comes back later on. And this is the dude, if there's one takeaway too, it's this, and this is in life too. When you get thrown a curveball, you can't let it completely destroy everything. Like I was bugging. I was like, what the do I do? They're really me over right now. But talk about how that issue twisted in the right way. I hit the curveball and it went even further. All of a sudden, we got a great arc. John becoming the mob boss, Solomon returning, John getting a little way too overboard. It was just that on the fly process. Like, all right, well, I guess we'll write it in, Solomon's going on vacation. destination, and who knows, right? Maybe she's, and that's the great thing is you can twist anything. It's your show, it's your story. And just because it's now not fueling the main objective, maybe you can find a new way to get to the same destination. That's the beautiful thing about it. I couldn't tell you, the trailer in Psycho Series was never going to be destroyed. That was never a thought. Same with the pool. These are massive destructions I never would have ever considered. However, a couple random things happened while we were doing the show. One was my dad was like, yo, it'd be dope if I had a new pool. I was like, what the? Is this dude trying to tell me he's fine with this current pool being destroyed? I'm like, you saying we could destroy the pool? He's like, I don't know. It'd be cool to have in-ground or something. I forget what the exact conversation was. But I'm like, so you're telling me we can destroy it? And then I forget how it came up. We were talking about Uncle Larry driving into it. And I was like, yo, would you be down for that? Kind of as a joke. It was nothing. It was very loose. And he's like, yeah, why not? And then literally, usually as a joke, that's how it starts. Boom, there's your show. There's a major plot point. And then the comment section, guys. The comment section was ripe with ideas, and I would integrate them in the show all the time. And it's something I still do to this day. The reason I'm making this video is thanks to you guys. You guys suggested I make this, and here we are. It's a very collaborative process. Somebody was like, as a joke, it was like a top comment on one. Psycho Dead Bazooka's RV. And I was like, what the? No. Where are we going to get a bazooka from? And we're not destroying a trailer. We're not destroying a trailer, right? Are we destroying a trailer? I was Uncle Larry, how much was this trailer? He was like, I think I owe like 12, 13 grand. I'm like, so if I gave you that money, you would give it to me? So yeah. All right, I'll buy your trailer off you and we'll have Psycho Dead destroy it. We weren't going to do a bazooka, but all of a sudden I'm like, I never thought about that. The channel was pulling maybe like 30K a month at the time. So it was like 12K, 1 month, big video. People be like, how is that fake? Like, holy crap, send it. All from one comment. Another funny example, I always think back, like me and Kid Behind a Camera, we were filming collab series in November of 2016. And I was telling him, I'm like, yo, I'm going to go to Boogie's house. It'd be cool to have like a collab series with him as well. We just started joking around. And it always starts as jokes where it's like, what if it was like Misery, the Stephen King novel, and he's like an obsessed fan? Or wouldn't it be funny if Boogie all of a sudden just like knocked on my door and was just like, what's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, Boogie298 coming at you live once again. Like just randomly, shirt off and everything, just comes into the bedroom. And I'm like, yeah, well, what if he like tries to get in bed with us also? I was like, what the and what if he locks me in the attic? You know, all these different things. Just throw it together in a pot, mix it up, and be like, yeah, that's what we're doing on any given day. So it really does help to have collaborators, people that you find funny or interesting, or just their brain is an open box and they're open to anything. They're creative. Find those people in your life and just spitball, and you'd be surprised at where it can go and where it can evolve into. And if you don't have those people, you can definitely find them in the McJuggerNuggets community. There's a lot of very creative people. But then also just write it yourself. You know, I most of my stuff I usually just write and come up with by myself, just because I have multiple personalities in my head that I can easily bounce off of to my other personalities. But anyway, guys, I really hope all this information helped you. This was like the first time I've ever kind of peeled back the curtain on my writing and creative process. If there's any other questions you have, leave them down below. Maybe I can do a follow-up video. Or if you want something now that takes the series stuff and maybe applies it on like, okay, that's all well and good how to tell a good show, but then how do you get it to be seen and how do you get views on that? Let me know. Like I said, help me create all these videos together with you guys. So please direct me into a direction you want me to go. And to be honest, all this talk is inspiring me to like write a new series or something. But there is that whole element of wanting to write something that will get views, and unfortunately, not trying to be pessimistic, it is very hard to get a creative story to get lots of views on YouTube because all of this algorithm and how stuff gets fed with SEO and trending topics. That is a whole entire process in of itself. But guys, thank you so much. Drop some likes on this video if you're pumped and you're ready to tackle a series. And if there's one last piece of advice, guys, your social media addiction will definitely kill you. You need to be able to get bored and isolate yourself, because when you're bored, all of a sudden that's when you come up with a goofy idea. That's why a lot of ideas come in the shower, and when you're driving, you're doing something, you're on autopilot, and your brain's able to wander and daydream. For as long as you have this device in your hands and you're looking at it, you're probably not going to be able to get any good ideas for starters, let alone develop and build very deep stories, mediums, and characters. And honestly, that's why I kind of say it's the lost art. I see less and less of it over time. And hey, let's try and keep this alive, guys. Make me proud. And hey, if there's a nice bunch of you that are interested in this stuff, maybe you guys can help me write the next series together. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I love you guys to death. Good luck, happy writing, and don't forget to keep it rigid.